My boss started hinting 3 weeks before my 40th birthday. It began casually, in the hallway after a quarterly review I had just saved from going sideways. He clapped my shoulder and said, "Big things are coming for you, Brenda. Just wait." At first, I thought it was corporate fluff. I'd been at Stratton Metrics for 14 years, long enough to know when praise was sincere and when it was insurance. Still, something about his tone stuck with me. Too careful. Too rehearsed. A few days later, during a late evening while I was reconciling client figures no one else bothered to double-check, he stopped by my desk again. "40's a milestone," he said, leaning on the partition. "You don't turn 40 every day." I smiled without looking up. "Trust me, I'm aware." He laughed. "You won't forget this one. Big surprise. Huge." That was hook number 2. The third came at home. He emailed me at 11:12 p.m. on a Sunday. Subject line: "Monday will be special." No explanation. No emoji. Just that. By then, I knew better than to get excited. 14 years had trained the optimism out of me, but it also trained me to pay attention. And something didn't sit right. Managers don't foreshadow raises. They deliver them quietly. Promotions don't get teased. They get announced in meetings where HR sits stiffly in the corner. Still, I couldn't help wondering. I had earned something. I had built something. When I joined Stratton, it was a struggling logistics analytics startup operating out of a converted storage unit that flooded every time it rained. I wrote the first operational dashboards. I trained half the sales team on systems they still used. When our biggest client threatened to walk in year 6, it was my weekend audit that caught the fatal reporting flaw before litigation followed. I didn't talk about it much. I never needed to. Results speak. Or at least, they used to. The Friday before my birthday, my calendar suddenly changed. A meeting block appeared from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., marked Executive Update, Mandatory. Just my name on the invite. No agenda. I screenshot it. People who plan surprises don't usually involve HR systems. Monday morning arrived cool and gray, the kind of weather that mimics decision days. I wore a structured navy dress, nothing flashy. Professional. Neutral. The clothes you wear when you're not sure if you're being celebrated or buried. As I walked in, the receptionist smiled a little too brightly. "Happy birthday, Brenda." That was new. I thanked her and headed toward my desk, and stopped mid-step. Someone else was sitting there. My chair, my dual monitors, my mug with the small chip on the handle from the year we moved offices, all occupied. The woman typing was young, early 20s maybe, hair too shiny to be stressed, AirPods in, stiletto heels propped casually against the file cabinet I'd labeled myself years ago. She looked up, pulled one earbud out, and smiled like we'd been introduced already. "Oh, hi. You must be Brenda. I'm Ava." The name landed weirdly familiar. Before I could respond, my boss's office door opened. He walked out smiling, hands clasped like a proud father at a graduation. "Morning, Brenda," he said cheerfully. "Perfect timing." My stomach didn't drop. That came later. First was the heat, the sudden awareness that something irreversible had already happened. "Ava's my daughter," he continued. "She just finished her business program. Top of her class." Ava waved, still seated. "You mentioned something big was coming," I said calmly. "Yes," he nodded. "This is it." He gestured around us like the reveal of a home renovation. "Congratulations," he said. "You're being replaced. Ava will be taking over your role. Fresh energy, new ideas. You understand." Several heads peeked out of nearby offices. Too quiet, too polished. I looked at Ava. She was already logged into my system. "I see," I said. My boss exhaled, relieved. He'd been bracing for resistance. "We're offering a generous transition," he added. "But today felt symbolic. Your birthday, the beginning of your next chapter." I smiled then. Not because I felt gracious, because I suddenly understood the game. "Completely understand," I said evenly. His shoulders relaxed. Ava smiled wider. What neither of them noticed was the notification buzzing quietly on my phone. Because while they were busy planning this moment, they had forgotten something. They forgot that replacing me wasn't just about the chair, and that the files Ava was typing into had never truly belonged to them to begin with. I didn't pack my things that morning. That surprised my boss. It surprised Ava too, though she tried to hide it behind another bright smile as she rolled my chair 2 inches closer to her desk. My desk. She kept calling it the desk, like possessions lose history once a new name is attached. "We'll give you the rest of the day," my boss said generously, already backing toward his office. "No rush." "No rush," I echoed. I walked to the break room, poured myself coffee from the same machine I'd complained about for years, and took a long sip. Bitter. Familiar. The kind of taste that anchors you when things tilt. People stared. Not openly. Not yet. Side glances. Slack notifications that paused mid-sentence when I passed. Someone whispered my name a little too loudly near the copy room. I didn't acknowledge any of it. That's the thing about shock people don't talk about. It's not loud. Not at first. It's quiet. Sharp. Focused. At 10:04 a.m., HR sent me an email. Subject: Transition documentation. Attachments 3, I didn't open them right away. Instead, I went back to my office. The smaller one I'd moved into 6 years earlier when space was needed for the sales expansion. Ava hadn't noticed it yet. Or maybe she assumed it was empty. I closed the door and logged in. My access wasn't cut. Not fully. Email? Still there. Internal dashboards? Active. Project repository? Limited but readable. That was mistake number 1. If you're going to replace someone quietly, you don't leave the lights on. A knock came at 10:22. It was Marcus from engineering. He hovered in the doorway like he didn't want to cross some invisible line. "Hey," he said. "Are you okay?" I looked up at him. Really looked. "I'm processing," I said honestly. He nodded. "Yeah, people are confused." "Let them be," I said. He hesitated. "Ava just asked me where the batch override notes are. The ones for the Eastbridge accounts." I felt my jaw tighten, just slightly. "And?" I asked. I told her they're scattered. They weren't. They were very carefully centralized. "Thanks," I said. That was the right answer. Marcus frowned. "Brenda, what's going on?" I closed my laptop and folded my hands on the desk. "What's going on?" I said slowly. "Is that your new boss doesn't know which walls are load-bearing?" He didn't smile. Neither did I. He left without another word. At noon, my boss called me into his office. He motioned for me to sit like this was just another check-in, like the morning hadn't happened. "HR sent you the documents," he said, fingers steepled. "We thought it would be cleaner this way." "Cleaner for whom?" I asked. He ignored that. "There's a 6-week knowledge transfer period. Ava will need—" "You already sat her at my desk," I said evenly. "What more knowledge are you expecting me to hand over?" He gave a tight smile. "Let's not be emotional." There it was. I leaned back. "This isn't emotional. It's operational." That threw him off. "You've positioned your daughter as my replacement without consulting the team, the clients, or the systems documentation lead," I continued, "which is me. Ava will learn quickly," he said. "From whom?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he slid a folder across the desk. "Severance," he said. "Generous. Full confidentiality, of course." I opened it. The number was large enough to tempt someone who believed this was the end of their usefulness. I closed the folder. "I won't be signing this today," I said. His eyes narrowed. We expected some resistance. "No," I said lightly. "You expected gratitude." Silence stretched between us. "What do you want, Brenda?" he finally asked. I stood. "What I've always wanted," I said. "For things to work." I left before he could frame that as something else. The rest of the day passed strangely. Ava scheduled meetings she didn't understand. I watched through calendar notifications auto-forwarded to my inbox. She invited stakeholders without context, asked questions that revealed more confidence than comprehension. At 3:17 p.m., a client support ticket escalated. Eastbridge Logistics, Tier 1. She routed it to the wrong queue. I fixed it quietly. Not because I owed anyone anything, but because fires reveal who actually knows the building. At 4:46, I finally opened the HR attachments. Severance, NDA, non-compete. I read every word slowly, then I opened a different folder on my computer. One I hadn't touched in years. Contracts, amendments, side letters. The ugly, unglamorous paper trail of a company that grew fast and patched as it went. And there it was. A clause inserted after our Series B when legal didn't think it mattered. Key Systems Knowledge Indemnity. My name was on it. Personally. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. They thought the surprise had already happened. They had no idea this was just the quiet part. I didn't tell anyone what I'd found. Not Marcus, not HR, not even Kara, who had been my closest ally in finance for nearly a decade. Silence, I'd learned, does something interesting inside organizations. It allows people to reveal themselves without interference. And they did. By Wednesday morning, Ava was confident enough to host her first leadership sync. Not officially announced, but there was a calendar invite. Operational alignment, forward focus. Every department head was included, except me. Marcus forwarded it at 8:12 a.m. Thought you should know. I replied with one word. Noted. I didn't attend. I didn't ask why I wasn't invited. I didn't walk past the conference room to make a point. I stayed in my office and did exactly what I'd always done. Monitored the systems that just worked. Around 9:40, the first small crack appeared. A data feed stalled. Not a full outage, just a partial delay in third-party shipment confirmations. Enough to trigger errors downstream if no one intervened. Ava's new automation workflow flagged it as non-critical. It wasn't. At 9:58, Marcus messaged again. We've got latency on Eastbridge again. Ava says to let it auto-resolve. I stared at the screen. Auto-resolve had failed twice last year under this exact condition. Once spectacularly. Override it manually, I typed. Tell her it's handled. He didn't respond for a minute. Then, she says not to touch it. Wants clean metrics. That was new. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked, not to the server room, but to Ava's new office. She was standing at my old whiteboard, rewriting terms she didn't fully grasp. Scalability, written twice, underlined. Ava, I said calmly. She turned, surprised. Oh, hi. Eastbridge latency, I continued. You need a manual override, now. She smiled, tight, performative. We're testing resilience, she said. Sometimes systems need to fail so we can understand them. I nodded slowly. This isn't testing, it's neglect. I think I've got it, she said, tone sharpened just enough to sting. You don't need to micromanage anymore. There it was. Not rude, just dismissive enough to reveal inexperience. All right, I said, just documenting that I flagged it. Her smile vanished for half a second. Do what you need to do, she said. So I did. I walked back to my office and sent one email. To legal, subject, Operational Risk Notice, Eastbridge Factual, neutral, time-stamped. At 10:37 a.m., Eastbridge's VP of Operations called. Direct, not customer service, not account managers. Me. Brenda, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. Your new lead just told us shipment confirmations may be delayed. That's not acceptable. I agree, I said. We've got penalties tied to this, he snapped. What's going on over there? I leaned back in my chair. There's been a transition, I said carefully. I'm still overseeing core stability. There was a pause. Good, he said. That's the only reason we haven't escalated yet. We ended the call with a promise I couldn't quite make. At 11:04, Ava burst into my office. "Why is Eastbridge calling legal?" she demanded. "You went over my head." "No," I said. "I followed protocol." "You undermined me," she said. I met her eyes. "I protected the company." Her nostrils flared. "You're not in charge anymore." I smiled, just slightly. "That hasn't changed anything," I said. She stormed out. An hour later, the system auto-resolver failed. Exactly like last year. Shipments stalled. Error logs stacked. Customer alerts fired. Marcus fixed what he could. I fixed what he missed. Quietly. Methodically. The way you fix things when ego isn't part of your process. At 2:15, my boss summoned me again. He looked less confident this time. "Clients are nervous," he said. "Ava's still settling in." "Then why remove the safety net?" I asked. He sighed. "She needs room to lead." "She needs a foundation," I corrected. He rubbed his temples. "This wouldn't be happening if you were more supportive." That one landed. "I was supportive for 14 years, I said. "I trained people, I built systems, I stayed late, I stayed quiet. Today isn't about support, it's about responsibility." He leaned back, studying me. "Are you threatening to walk?" "No," I said. "I'm warning you not to trip." That evening, Kara found me in the parking lot. "They're talking about accelerating the transition," she said. "Cutting checks, cleaning house." "Of course they are," I replied. She hesitated. "You should protect yourself." "I already am," I said. That night, at home, I opened the old folder again. The indemnity clause. The signatures. The dates. Companies forget the people who hold them together because those people rarely announce themselves. They just work. Until one day they stop covering the cracks. And everyone finally notices where the weight really was. By Friday, everyone could feel it. Not panic, not yet. But that brittle tension that settles in when people realize leadership is guessing instead of steering. Conversations stopped when Ava entered rooms. Calendars quietly shifted. Meetings multiplied without decisions. Systems were still running. Barely. At 8:06 a.m., I received a meeting request from my boss. Subject: alignment moving forward. Attendees: me, him, HR. I accepted without comment. Before the meeting, Marcus stopped me in the hallway. "She wants to push the new vendor integration live next week," he whispered. "No sandbox, no rollback plan." I paused. "Did you tell her that violates 3 client SLAs?" "Yes," he said. "She told me innovation requires risk." I exhaled slowly. "Thank you for telling me." At 9 o'clock sharp, I sat across from my boss in the conference room I'd helped design. Glass walls, no privacy. HR sat stiffly beside him, folders stacked like a shield. "Brenda," he began, "we need clarity." "Happy to provide it," I said. He nodded. "We're moving faster than expected. Ava's leadership is drawing attention. That's good. But the overlap is creating confusion." "Overlap implies collaboration," I replied. "This is replacement." HR cleared her throat. "We need to finalize your exit date." "There won't be one," I said. My boss blinked. "That's not realistic." "I disagree," I said calmly. "What's unrealistic is pretending this company can sever 14 years of institutional knowledge with a signature." He shifted. "We've offered generous compensation." "This isn't about money," I said. "It's about exposure." Silence. I slid a single printed page onto the table. The indemnity clause. HR leaned in first. Her eyes widened just enough to tell me she hadn't known. My boss frowned. "What is this?" "A liability bridge," I said. "Put in place after Series B, to retain continuity for core systems during executive transitions." He scanned it, slower now. "You're named," he said quietly. "Yes," I said. "Personally." And until that risk is resolved, the board requires my involvement. HR swallowed. This triggers review, she said. My boss looked up. Why didn't you bring this up before? I met his gaze. You didn't ask? That afternoon, Ava learned about the clause. She stormed into my office, door open just long enough for everyone nearby to hear. You did this on purpose, she snapped. You're sabotaging my role. I stayed seated. I documented reality. You're making everyone afraid to act, she said. No, I replied. Your decisions are doing that. She crossed her arms. My father built this company. Your father started it, I said evenly. Other people built it. Her face flushed. You're punishing me because I replaced you. I leaned forward slightly. No, I'm protecting the people who don't get to fail loudly. She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed bitterly. You think the board cares about you? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Marcus, vendor testing flagged critical breach. Ava approved rollout anyway. I stood. This conversation is over, I said, reaching for my jacket. She scoffed. Running to tattle? No, I said, running to prevent damage. At 3:02 p.m., the breach hit. Not catastrophic. Yet, but enough to trigger automated alerts with 2 major clients. Dashboards lit up. Slack exploded. Ava called an emergency meeting. This time, I was invited. Her voice shook just slightly as she spoke about temporary instability and forward resilience. When she finished, no one spoke. Finally, Kara from finance broke the silence. Who approved this rollout? She asked. Ava lifted her chin. I did. And who owns the indemnity risk if clients invoke penalties? Kara continued. Ava hesitated. All eyes turned to my boss. He didn't answer. I stood. For clarity, I said, voice steady. I issued a formal risk notice Tuesday. This deployment ignored it. Ava's head snapped toward me. You're enjoying this, she said. I'm documenting it, I replied. That was when legal entered the call. Late. Unplanned. Given the escalation, the attorney said carefully, the board has requested a review of current leadership authority around system changes. Ava went pale. What does that mean? She asked. It means, legal said, all operational changes are paused pending assessment. Paused? My boss asked. Yes, legal replied, effective immediately. After the call ended, Ava slumped into her chair. No one looked at her. That night, I stayed late. Not to fix things, they were already patched, but to prepare. I gathered documentation, emails, risk notices, training records, the quiet proof that responsibility had been present all along. As I shut down my computer, I realized something. This was no longer about whether Ava could lead. It was about whether the company could survive pretending experience was expendable. And tomorrow, the board was going to have to answer that question out loud. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. Same long walnut table. Same panoramic city view. Same framed mission statement on the wall about integrity, trust, and vision. Words that had aged poorly. I sat at the far end this time, not as the invisible engine, not as the reliable operator, but as the problem no one could ignore anymore. Across from me sat Martin, my former boss, my replacement's father. His hands were folded so tightly his knuckles had gone white. To his right was Evelyn, his daughter. Perfect posture, tight smile, confidence leaking by the second. Around them, 5 board members shuffled papers they had never bothered to read before today. The meeting had been called urgent. Funny how urgency only appears when consequences arrive. The chairwoman cleared her throat. Let's begin. Brenda, since you initiated this review, we'll start with you. All eyes turned to me. I stood slowly, not dramatically, just steady. 3 months ago, I began. I was removed from my role without a transition plan, without notice, and without legal review. I was told it was a gift, A birthday surprise. No one laughed. At the time, I said I understood. That wasn't resignation. That was restraint. Martin shifted. Evelyn stared at the table. I clicked the remote in my hand. The screen lit up behind me. The first slide showed a timeline. Over the last 12 years, I designed, maintained, and directly managed our compliance infrastructure for 5 regulated clients. Those clients account for 62% of company revenue. Another click. Contract excerpts. Signatures. My name typed cleanly at the bottom. When the company expanded rapidly, we did not transfer those relationships to a department. We didn't have one. We transferred them to me. I paused. Let that breathe. I saw it then. The recognition dawning on a few faces. The quiet recalculation. Evelyn finally looked up. No one said you were irreplaceable, she said too quickly. I met her gaze. I'm not, but experience doesn't duplicate itself overnight. Click. The next slide showed dates, missed renewals, delayed audits, escalation emails. Since my removal, 3 clients formally flagged concerns. One suspended onboarding, another requested an external audit. Martin spoke, voice strained. We assumed those were transitional growing pains. They are, I replied calmly. Painful ones. The chairwoman leaned forward. Brenda, are you saying these risks were foreseeable? Yes, I said. And documented. I clicked again. Emails appeared. Internal messages, meeting notes, warnings I'd sent months before about system fragility, relationship management, knowledge transfer. Ignored. Archived. Dismissed. Evelyn crossed her arms. You're framing this like sabotage. I'm framing it like causality. Silence. I turned off the projector and faced them fully. I didn't come here to be reinstated. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came here because the company is bleeding quietly, and you deserve to know why. One board member spoke up. What do you want? There it was. I took a breath. Recognition, not performative. Structural. Martin looked at me, eyes glossy now. What does that mean? It means acknowledging that removing institutional knowledge has consequences. It means repairing trust with clients before posturing innovation. It means leadership that earns authority. And you? The chairwoman asked. I'm not asking for my old job, I said. I'm asking for a consulting agreement, clearly defined, properly compensated, with authority over a transitional rebuild. Evelyn scoffed softly. So you get rewarded for being bitter? I turned to her fully then. This was never about bitterness. It was about being diminished and told to smile through it. Her mouth opened, closed. One of the board members cleared his throat. If we don't agree? Then I step away permanently, I said. And I take my client endorsements with me. That did it. The chairwoman looked at Martin. Can we have the room? He hesitated, then nodded. Martin and Evelyn left. The door closed. 10 minutes later, they were called back in. The decision came without theatrics. Evelyn would step down from her leadership role effective immediately. She would remain employed in a junior advisory capacity. Martin would formally retire within the year. And I would return, not as an employee, but as an external consultant reporting directly to the board. When the chairwoman said my name, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, relief. The meeting ended quietly. In the hallway, Evelyn approached me alone. I didn't think it would go like this, she said. I know, I replied. She hesitated. You could have warned me. I tried, I said gently. You didn't hear me. She nodded once, walked away. 2 weeks later, I signed my contract. 3 times my previous pay. Defined scope. Exit clauses in my favor. But the real victory came later. A handwritten note arrived at my home, from one of our oldest clients. We were worried when you left. Things haven't felt right since. We're glad you're back. in whatever way works for you. I placed it on my desk and sat there for a long time. On my 41st birthday, I worked from home. No cake, no speeches, just clarity. They tried to make my ending neat, disposable, quiet. Instead, I rewrote the middle. And the truth is this: people don't fear being replaced by someone younger. They fear being erased by someone unprepared. I didn't fight to stay. I stood still long enough for the truth to catch up. And it did. The ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers, every surface drenched in gold and champagne light. The stage was framed with banners showing the product I had spent 5 years designing. My product. The one that had cost me late nights, canceled vacations, strained relationships, and more tears than I would ever admit. Tonight was supposed to be my night. People from all departments filled the room, dressed in cocktail attire, laughing, clinking glasses, congratulating each other on our shared success. But beneath their smiles, I could see it. Pride, relief, anticipation. Everyone knew a big announcement was coming. The promotion, the recognition, the moment of truth, my moment. I stood near the stage, smoothing the fabric of my emerald dress, reminding myself to breathe. My heart thudded against my ribs, louder than the music, louder than the chatter. For 5 years, I had built this project from an idea sketched on a napkin into a fully patented, market-ready innovation. There were nights I slept in the office because going home felt like wasted time. There were mornings I stared at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the exhausted woman looking back. But I believed it would be worth it. That this would finally be the moment everything paid off. My boss, Arthur Reynolds, stood behind the podium now, tapping his champagne glass with a fork. The room quieted. A hush fell. Heavy, expectant. My stomach tightened. He smiled broadly, scanning the crowd like a king preparing to make a royal decree. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice booming with practiced confidence. "Tonight isn't just about a launch. It's about excellence, leadership, future potential." My breath halted. Future potential. He'd used those same words in my last evaluation, right before telling me I was the frontrunner for the Senior Development Director position. People glanced at me. Some smiled, some nodded. A few whispered, "It's going to be her." Arthur continued. This person showed effort, determination, and a fresh spark we couldn't ignore. Fresh spark? What did that? And so, he lifted a small velvet box. "I am thrilled to announce that our new Director of Innovation is..." Time stretched. My pulse rang in my ears. "Michelle Carter." My head snapped up. Michelle, 22, 2 months at the company, couldn't read half the system documents without asking for explanations. Michelle, who blushed now as applause erupted, her cheeks matching her lipstick. She walked toward Arthur while people clapped like they'd witnessed history. I stood frozen. Inside, everything crashed. Anger, disbelief, humiliation. But on the outside, I stayed perfectly still. My fingers curled around my champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Arthur handed her the box. She opened it. A gold company pin glittered from inside, the symbol given only to top executives. Then Arthur turned to me. "Oh, and Daisy?" His tone shifted. Lighter, dismissive. "You were such a helper during this process. We didn't forget you." He reached into his pocket and held out a $20 gift voucher to a coffee shop. "For your effort," he said with a smile meant to look generous. Somewhere in the crowd, someone laughed. Another snorted. Someone whispered, $20? Seriously? But I smiled. Calm, steady, unbothered. Because while they were busy applauding Michelle, I was already done with them. I lifted my chin, took the voucher between 2 fingers, and said clearly, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, "Thank you, Arthur. This is thoughtful." Michelle looked uncomfortable now. eyes bouncing between me and Arthur like she'd stepped into a fire she didn't start. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a sealed envelope. Crisp, deliberate. I handed it to Arthur. "For you," I said softly. He blinked, confused, then tore it open. As his eyes scanned the first line, his face drained of color. Then red returned. Fast, violent. His voice shattered through the room. "Daisy, tell me you're joking." Everyone stopped. Music died. Conversations froze. Heads turned. I held his furious gaze with a calmness I hadn't felt in years. "I don't joke about my future," I said. The letter in his trembling hand wasn't just a resignation. It was the first domino. And Arthur, along with everyone in that glittering ballroom, was about to learn exactly what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. Because I hadn't spent 5 years building something for them. I had built something bigger, something mine. And this was only the beginning. For a moment, no one moved. The ballroom that just seconds ago was full of laughter and applause now sat in stunned silence, thick and suffocating. Arthur stood frozen, holding my resignation letter like it was a live grenade. His jaw clenched, his nostrils flared, and his voice trembled. Not with sadness, but with rage. "You can't just walk away." He hissed under his breath, trying to maintain composure as dozens of eyes watched. I kept my smile polite, steady. I already did. A few nearby employees exchanged shocked glances. Someone covered their mouth to hide a grin. And then, quietly, so quietly I almost questioned whether I heard it, someone clapped. Just once. But one clap is all it takes to break a spell. A second joined, then another, until small, hesitant applause rippled across the room. Not loud, not bold, but just enough to make Arthur's ears burn. His face reddened. He leaned forward. "Daisy, can we speak privately?" His voice was tight, strained. I nodded once. "Of course." I followed him toward a hallway near the back of the ballroom. The moment we were out of view, the mask fell. His polished executive voice vanished, replaced by something raw and furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "Leaving," I said simply. "No." He jabbed a finger toward the ballroom. "You can't do this here. Not tonight. Not after everything we invested in you." I raised an eyebrow. "Everything you invested in me?" "Arthur, I worked unpaid weekends. I fixed errors your engineering team couldn't solve. I pitched investors who thought I was just an assistant until I started speaking. Don't rewrite history now." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I continued, calm but direct. "You knew I was expecting that promotion. You encouraged it. You let me believe it. And then you replaced 5 years of work with a face that looks better in photos." His jaw twitched. "Michelle earned her position. She's been here 8 weeks. And she brings something this company needs. Energy, relatability, youth. You're good, Daisy, but you're not what we need going forward." There it was, said plainly. Not talented enough. Not flashy enough. Not new enough. Just not enough. A strange calm washed over me. "Then it seems we agree," I said softly. "You don't need me." His eyes narrowed. "You think you can threaten me with leaving? You think your departure changes anything?" I didn't flinch. "I don't need to threaten you. Time will do that for me." He barked a humorless laugh. "You're replaceable. Everyone is replaceable." I leaned in just slightly. Some replacements cost more than others. That struck him. Hard. He swallowed, shoulders tight. "You're making a mistake. In 6 months, you'll be begging for a recommendation." "I won't need one." A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, but only for a beat. "Fine," he spat. "But when this industry shuts doors in your face, remember tonight." "Oh, I will," I said, "but not the way you think." Before he could respond, the hallway door swung open and Michelle stepped out. She looked nervous, clutching her new executive pin like she wasn't sure she deserved it. Arthur? She asked. They're waiting for you to continue the program. He forced a smile, but his voice was brittle. Be right there. She nodded and glanced at me. Daisy, I didn't know any of this. I held her gaze. She wasn't my enemy, not really. She was young, ambitious, and oblivious to the politics she'd been dropped into. I don't blame you, I said quietly. Relief flickered in her expression, followed quickly by guilt. Arthur marched past her without another word. When he was gone, Michelle hesitated before saying softly, For what it's worth, everyone knows this product is yours. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She walked back into the ballroom, and I lingered a moment longer, grounding myself. The music resumed, murmurs filled the air again, but something had shifted. It wasn't just me walking away from them. It was them watching me leave, with uncertainty, curiosity, and something else. Respect. I returned to the room only long enough to grab my coat and purse. As I walked toward the exit, one colleague, Rachel, from finance, touched my arm. Good for you, she whispered. I nodded once and continued walking. Outside, the night air hit my skin. Cool, sharp, electric. I exhaled deeply, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. Leaving should have felt terrifying. Instead, it felt like freedom knocking. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was the first step toward the life I should have been building all along. And Arthur? He had no idea what was coming next. The morning after the launch felt strangely quiet. No alarms, no rushed emails, no frantic mental checklist waiting for me before my feet even touched the floor. I sat at my kitchen table with a real breakfast, eggs still warm, toast not eaten over a keyboard. And for the first time in years, I wasn't exhausted before the day began. But the peace lasted only a few moments before my phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then again. By the fifth notification, I sighed and reached for it. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages, 3 emails marked urgent, all from the same person, Arthur. The subject lines read like stages of panic. We need to talk. Call me immediately. This isn't professional. Daisy, respond. We need access to your files. Ah, there it was. Access. For years, every critical blueprint, version log, patent update, and testing documentation had passed through me. Not because I demanded control, but because no one else ever bothered to learn the system. They were used to me being there, silently fixing, silently leading, silently holding everything together. And now I was gone. My lips curved, not into a smug smile, but something quieter. Something that came from finally realizing just how badly they had underestimated me. I ignored the messages and got ready for the day. Not to go to work, but to meet someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. At 10:30 a.m., I walked into a small cafe a few blocks from my apartment. The place smelled like roasted beans and warm pastries. A barista glanced up and nodded politely. A man sat in the corner, mid-40s, sharp eyes behind wireframe glasses, suit jacket draped on the chair beside him. He looked up as I approached, then stood. Daisy, he said with a small smile. You actually came. Of course, I answered, extending my hand. Good to see you, Adrian. We sat. Adrian Chen was the former CTO of the company, brilliant, respected, and one of the only leaders I had ever genuinely admired. He left 2 years ago after clashing with Arthur over ethics and direction. When he resigned, the company shifted. Not drastically at first, but subtly. That was when the shortcuts began. The compromises, the politics. The decline had started long before last night's humiliation. So, Adrian said, leaning back. I heard about the spectacle. My eyebrow lifted. Already? Oh, Daisy, he chuckled. The tech world travels faster than any news outlet. Word is, Arthur had a meltdown after you left. I blinked once, slowly. Meltdown? Full collapse. It can't find your encrypted workflow. The research files are locked. And apparently the patent transition schedule was never finalized. I let out a breath. Half sigh, half disbelief. That wasn't negligence, I said. Arthur told me to wait until after the promotion announcement. He wanted it to be symbolic. Adrian's expression sharpened. And instead, he handed the project to someone who doesn't know the difference between a prototype log and a finalized architecture. Silence stretched. Finally, I nodded. He clasped his hands together. Daisy, I didn't ask you here to gossip. I asked because I have something for you. I waited. As soon as I left the company, I started building something new, he said. A startup. Not rushed, not reckless. Something clean. Something ethical. Something built the right way. I could feel my pulse shift, not faster, but clearer. I've been following your work, he continued. You have talent, vision, and most importantly, grit. I've been waiting for the moment you realized you deserved better. My breath caught. Then he said it. I want you to join me. Not as an employee, as a co-founder. For a moment, everything around me blurred. The clinking cups, the quiet chatter, the hiss of steaming milk. All I could hear was the echo of one thought. Co-founder. Not a helper, not a placeholder, not a shadow. A partner. I know what you sacrificed at your last job, Adrian said quietly. But I also know you're the kind of person who doesn't just build products. His eyes met mine. You build futures. I didn't speak right away. Not because I doubted the offer, but because it felt like the first time someone truly saw me. I'll need time to think, I finally said. Of course, he replied. But Daisy? Yes? You're worth far more than a promotion. I exhaled slowly, feeling something loosen inside me, a weight I'd carried for far too long. When I walked out of the cafe, sunlight hit my face. The day felt different. Open, unwritten. My phone vibrated again. Another text from Arthur. We need you back. Call me. Immediately. I locked the screen. Not yet. He wasn't ready for my answer, but soon, very soon, he would learn exactly what it cost to treat loyalty as disposable. Because I wasn't the one losing anything anymore. He was. By Wednesday morning, the situation had shifted from inconvenient to chaotic, at least for Arthur's company. My phone continued vibrating throughout the morning like an angry wasp trapped in a jar. This time, the messages weren't just from Arthur. They were from people I used to work beside every day. Daisy, do you still have access to the test environment? We can't locate the latest version. Do you have a moment? We need clarification on the rollout timeline. Hey, just checking in. Are you really gone? Then came the one that made me pause. We need your help. Client review in 2 hours. No one can explain your design. I stared at the message for a long moment. The irony was almost painful. 2 weeks earlier, I'd sat in a leadership meeting practically begging for assistance, asking for someone to be trained as backup, requesting more structure, more support. Arthur had waved it off. His exact words echoed clearly in my head. We don't need to waste resources. You've got it handled. And now? Without me, nothing was handled. Still, a part of me, the responsible part, the part that hated watching people fail, considered replying. Not for Arthur, for the team. People who had worked late with me. People who had supported me when upper management didn't. People who weren't responsible for how things unfolded. But then another thought followed, steadier and colder. If I step in now, nothing changes. They learn nothing. So I put the phone face down on the table, exhaled, and turned back to the document Adrian had sent me. A full outline of his new company's blueprint, vision, and early projections. It wasn't just interesting. It was promising. And for the first time in years, I could see a future that wasn't built on someone else's approval. At noon, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole stood someone I never expected. Rachel, From finance. One of the few people who never treated my ideas like background noise. When I opened the door, she managed a small, apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry for just showing up," she said, "but I really needed to talk to you." I stepped aside. "Come in." She sat at my dining table while I made tea. Her leg bounced beneath the chair, a subtle sign of nerves. Finally, she spoke. "It's bad, Daisy. Really bad." "How bad?" She exhaled slowly. "The investors scheduled a surprise audit. The product is supposed to go live next month, and no one can answer their technical questions." A beat passed. "Some of them asked directly where you were." I swallowed, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed what I already knew. They hadn't valued me, but they had depended on me. "Michelle's struggling," Rachel continued. "She's trying, she really is, but she's lost. And Arthur, he's furious, at everyone, but mostly at you." "Because I left?" I asked. "No," she said softly, "because he finally realizes what he had." Silence settled. Then she added, "He told the board you'd return." My eyebrows lifted. "Did he?" She nodded. "He's convinced this is temporary. He thinks you're just emotional." There it was. The dismissive narrative so many women knew too well. Emotional, overreacting, sensitive, never logical, never strategic. My jaw tightened. Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. "He asked me to give you this if I saw you." I didn't take it. Instead, I asked, "Have you read it?" She hesitated, then nodded. I shouldn't have. "But yes." "What does it say?" She wet her lips, choosing her words. "It's a job offer, a higher title, more pay. He wants to negotiate." I laughed, quiet, humorless. "So now my value exists." Rachel lowered her gaze. "I think he finally sees it." "No," I corrected gently. "He sees the consequences." She looked at me, emotion flickering behind her eyes. "Are you really done, Daisy?" The question wasn't judgment. It was fear. Fear of what shifting power meant. I leaned back, letting the quiet stretch before answering. "Yes, I'm done." For a moment, Rachel didn't move. Then she nodded, slowly, thoughtfully. "I think," she said, voice nearly a whisper, "you're right." I looked at her. "You deserve better, too." Her eyes widened, startled. I continued, "You're smart, capable. You've held that finance department together longer than any of them realize." A faint, startled laugh escaped her. "Nobody ever says that." "Well," I said, "maybe that's the problem." She exhaled, stood, and gave me a long look. A look full of respect, fear, hope, and something else. Possibility. "If you need me," she said, "I'm here." And then, almost as an afterthought, "And if you and Adrian really build something, call me." When she left, I stood alone in the quiet apartment, but I didn't feel alone. I felt aligned. Leaving hadn't just changed my circumstances. It was beginning to change others. Silently, quietly, powerfully. And Arthur? He was only now realizing the truth. When you build your empire on someone else's labor, you should never assume they'll stay forever. Because eventually, they walk away, and the cracks begin to show. On Friday morning, 1 week after the launch party, I walked into the lobby of Arthur's company for what I knew would be the last time. Not because I'd been summoned, though there were more missed calls and emails than I cared to count, but because I wanted closure on my terms. The receptionist stiffened when she saw me, then forced a polite smile. "Good morning, Daisy. He's expecting you." Of course he was. I walked past the security gates, past the glass meeting rooms, past coworkers who tried to pretend they weren't watching. Some nodded, some avoided eye contact, and some looked at me with something close to admiration. Power shifted silently, and everyone felt it. When I reached Arthur's office, the door was already open. He stood behind his desk, shoulders tense, trying and failing to look composed. Daisy. His voice was clipped, controlled. Come in. I did. He gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. He cleared his throat, then handed me a printed sheet. Formal letterhead, bold title, revised offer. I skimmed it. Higher salary, executive role, equity, decision authority. Everything I should have received 5 years ago. And everything he swore I didn't deserve. I want you back, he said, finally breaking the silence. You built this. You belong here. There it was. The apology without the word sorry. I appreciate the offer, I said evenly, but I'm not coming back. His jaw tightened. You're acting out of pride. No, I replied calmly. I'm acting out of clarity. He tried again, voice strained. You're walking away from stability, from everything you worked for. I met his eyes. I'm walking away from being underestimated. There's a difference. For a moment, there was nothing but quiet. The heavy kind that exposes truth. Then his posture changed. Defensive. Cornered. This is a mistake, he muttered. You're giving up your future. A slow breath left my lungs. No, Arthur, I'm taking it back. I placed the offer letter on his desk, unread beyond the basics, and slid it toward him. And one more thing, I added. You don't get to rewrite the narrative. I didn't leave because I was emotional. I left because you made it clear loyalty meant nothing here. His face paled. You can replace roles, I said softly, but you can't replace respect. And with that, I turned and walked out. By the time I reached the elevator, something unexpected happened. Someone clapped. Not mockingly, not sarcastically. A single firm clap, then another, then more. By the time the elevator doors closed, half the floor was applauding. Softly. Not as a spectacle, but as acknowledgement. I didn't need a promotion. I had already earned something far more valuable. Self-worth. 3 months later, Adrian and I launched our company. It wasn't glamorous at first. Mismatched furniture, shared desks, walls covered in sketches and strategy notes. But there was energy, purpose, respect. Michelle reached out once, quietly, privately. You were right. I wasn't ready. I'm leaving soon, too. If you ever need someone willing to learn, I'm here. I didn't hold resentment. She wasn't the villain, just another player in a broken system. I replied, when you're ready, reach out. No titles, no shortcuts, just work. She sent back a single sentence. Thank you for not hating me. And I didn't. Because my story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about growth. 6 months after leaving, I received a text from Rachel. It finally happened. The board removed Arthur. Too many mistakes. Too many clients lost. A long pause. Then another message. Funny how the person he called replaceable is the one no one could replace. I stared at the message for a long moment. Not with satisfaction, but with quiet, steady closure. Arthur had tried to build power on dismissal, ego, and assumption. But power built on disrespect is temporary. Power built on work, integrity, and boundaries? That lasts. On the 1-year anniversary of leaving, I stood in my new office. Glass windows overlooking the city. A desk covered in active projects and future plans. Adrian walked in holding 2 coffees. Ready? He asked. I nodded. We were meeting a new client, one bigger than anything I'd worked on before, one that had chosen us because of my reputation. Not the company's, mine. And as I walked into that meeting room, I realized something. My past wasn't a failure. It was training. Proof that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Not to run, not to escape, but to make space for the life you were meant to build.